To order. We'll stand and have the Pledge of Allegiance first.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Arbogast.
Here.
Garnos.
Here.
Gisselbeck.
Here.
Heller.
Here.
Johnson. Meisenheimer.
Here.
Solberg. Walder.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
And York.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we begin the agenda items, we have a donation that will be made to the Search, Dive, and Rescue, and I'd like to have those folks step forward.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, for the opportunity to share with you one of the important things that our organization does within the community and within Cottington County. Our mission statement says, and I quote, "Thrivent Financial for Lutherans is a faith-based membership organization called to improve the quality of life of its members, their families, and their communities by providing unparalleled solutions. We focus on financial security, wellness, and caring for others." Your Cottington County Search and Rescue Team is an organization that somewhat parallels that mission statement of ours as they look to improve the quality of life for families and to provide solutions in areas that are most stressful to families at certain times. And that's one of the reasons that Thrivent Financial has been on hand and a willing partner, along with many others in the community, to assist them in their organizational fundraising efforts. We were able this year to secure a special grant out of the department that Nancy York works for, our fraternal department. It was a special grant, so this was extra money coming into our community in the amount of $3,000. And Les Judding and myself, Courtney Livingston, were the representatives for Thrivent Financial. They're here tonight. So on behalf of the Thrivent Financial, we would like to present a check in the amount of $3,000 to your Cottington County Search and Rescue Team. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for the opportunity. Greetings to the council. I miss not being there, but you're doing a great job. Thank you very much, and thank you to the mayor for letting this opportunity be available. Thrivent has been on board in the old days as a Association of Lutherans and Lutheran Brotherhood as long as the city and Cottington County have been in support of our team. These $3,000 goes a tremendous distance for us, and of course we thank for your support always as well, and Thrivent especially for this donation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll begin with agenda item number 1, which is a motion to approve the minutes of the City Council meeting held on October 17th, 2005. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Johnson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Solberg. Is there any additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 2 is the special assessments for weed cutting, and Tracy, you'll address that?
Thank you. I can introduce that. The agenda packet included a list of 4 weed assessments to be placed or certified to the county with the city council's approval. Just as a reminder to those council members, if you don't recall, from time to time when complaints do come in, it's necessary for the street department to go out and cut weeds. If the property owners are not taking care of those, the street department then notifies the finance department how many hours they spent. We bill their time out at $75 an hour, and most of those over the course of the summer will get paid. However, those that do not get paid do come before the council then each year at this time to be certified and placed as a lien on the property, and then we do collect them along with property taxes the following year, typically. If there are any questions, I'd try to answer those. If not, I refer it back to you, Mayor, for the public hearing if there's anyone here to address any of these assessments.
Thank you, Tracy. We'll begin with the special assessments for weed cutting with a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to that issue? If not, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask council now for action to approve the assessment roll.
So moved.
So moved by Pat Walder, second.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mrs. York. Is there any discussion on?
Yes, I just had a question. Are they contacted more than once before
Yes.
this message?
Yes.
Anyone else have any questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 3 is the 2005 street and alley improvements. That's projects 0501-A, D, E, and F. And Dave Peterson.
Good evening. This item covers the street projects and alley projects that were completed during this past summer. The first item on the list is item A, which is a change order number 4, which is a final change order for this project. And this is an adjustment of all of the quantities for the various projects to reflect the actual quantities that were installed. This is for a increase of $9,486.24.
Could we have a motion to approve the change order number 4?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Giselbeck, seconded.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mrs. Arbogast. Is there any questions? Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item B is the public hearing on the special assessment roll. The notices were sent out to all of the property owners with the amount of their assessment, and now is their opportunity to have any questions answered concerning that.
We'll begin with the public hearing on this special assessment roll. Is there anyone here to speak to that issue? No, Mrs. Gill, this is, yours is up next. Okay.
Is this Proposition F, is that what we're talking about here?
CF.
This would be for projects that have actually been constructed this past summer.
Different.
Yeah,
And our-
I'm sorry.
2005.
Is there anyone here to address the projects that were completed this past summer?
2005, okay.
Yeah, I got two garages down there. My name is William E. Kozak, and I got a letter from them, and they assessed us as $341.46. But the garages that I own are not adjacent to any city or alley. They are in the middle of the block. I was wondering why we should be assessed that against our property that's not by the street.
I assume that you're talking off of 16th and 11th area.
Yeah.
When the special assessment went through and was approved, the storage garages on the corner of 11th and 16th were all assessed based upon the square footage of the property within that off of 16th Street, because they are all benefiting from the 16th Street because they access onto 16th Street. And that's the way the special assessment was approved to begin with, so that's why there should have been notices at that time that were sent out to that effect.
Mr. Kozad, do you have any questions in regards to that explanation?
No, but I understand what he means, but I thought the property had to belong, be up against the street when they assessed it.
I mean, the reasoning is that it can be assessed based on a benefit basis. Now, the benefit basis can be however the council determines the benefit is. I mean, if the council feels that there was benefit to those properties by the street being constructed there, they don't necessarily have to be adjacent to the street to do it on a benefit basis.
And that's the way it was explained last year when we had this discussion about approving this project. I recall that.
Mr. Kozad, would you like to add anything to that, or?
No, that's explained it.
Okay, sir. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the public hearing on the special assessment? If not, I'll close the public hearing and go to council action on resolution number 5-4. May I have a motion, please?
So move.
So moved by Mr. Johnson, seconded.
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. York. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4 is the 2006 Street and Alley Improvements, which is projects 0601-A, B, C, E, F, I, J, and K. And Dave again?
Each year, the engineering department takes requests for the street and alley improvements to be constructed and assessed to the property owners. In August, we prepare petitions for the property owners who have made the requests and contact them so they can distribute the petitions for signatures. Approved projects are designed and bid for the next year's construction. We've received 6 petitions for alley improvements and 2 for street improvements. The council may consider these petitions and may decide to adopt with amendment, or disapprove the resolution of necessity for these projects. Projects can be approved without the signatures representing the majority of the property owners. If a project is approved, the property owners have 20 days from the publication of the resolution of necessity to file a petition objecting to the project. If this petition is signed by the property owners representing 55% of the frontage, the project is defeated. The engineering department recommends alleys and streets be improved with asphalt surfaces whenever possible to reduce maintenance and reduce the washing of materials into storm sewers, rivers, and lakes. I'm going to go through these projects one by one, explaining where the project is and how many petitions or how many signatures we have received on each one of the petitions, and then we'll open each one of them up for a public hearing on each one of them for anyone to address the council, and then the council can make their decisions based upon that. The first project is 601A. This is an alley from 4th Avenue South to 5th Avenue South between South Broadway and 1st Street West. This project, or this one, had a letter from property owners, actually 3 co-owners of a property along this alley objecting to the property, or to the project. Their only objection was they didn't see the benefit to it. The petition for this project had 35.7% of the property abutting the street represented by signatures. This amounted to 4 out of the 13 property owners that are adjacent to this alley.
we'll open up the public hearing then for 0601-A. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue in the public hearing? If not, we'll close the public hearing and ask for council action. Can I have a motion to either approve or disapprove?
Excuse me, Mayor, unless the council wishes to remove this project from the proposed resolution, no action would be necessary. Only if they intend to amend the project or remove it entirely would action be required.
Okay, then, thank you, Tracy. We'll just close the public hearing then, and we'll go on to the next one.
The next project is 601B. It's an alley from 9th Avenue North to 10th Avenue North between North Broadway and North Maple. This also had one letter from a lady who owns property along there objecting to the project. The petition had 69.4% of the property owners signatures representing 69.4% of the property along the project. This amounted to 5 out of the 8 property owners along this particular alley.
I'll open the public hearing up for 601-B. Is there anyone here to speak to that issue?
I'm a property owner in that area, and is it my understanding now that with 50, how many percent?
69.4.
People who want the project, right?
Correct.
Then what I have to say is probably not very important. Our letter stated that the city council declares the following street improvements to be a necessity, and in my view, it is not a necessity. We have seen the alley dug up with new lines many times in the last, few years, and who knows, maybe next year it'll be my turn. I'll have a need to lay a new line, and then the asphalt has to be dug up, and this happened to my lady friend in another area in Watertown. They paved the alley, and then they were digging it up always to lay a new line. I was also told by someone at City Hall today that the cost is stated in the letter as between 16 and 19 per foot of frontage dollars, and that cost could vary, and if the bids came in higher, that cost would be more than the $19 that's stated in the letter. So the cost could very well be more than anticipated. I don't see that it would enhance my property value very much, and my main objection is I live on a tight budget, and this would put a strain on my budget. Thank you for your time.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Ma'am, can I have you identify yourself,
Yes,
please, and
I'm
where you
Doris.
live?
I live at 916 North Broadway. I'm Doris Quigley. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Neiman. I reside at 905 North Maple in Watertown, South Dakota. I also would like to be heard as to this alley presentation that's been set forth in the letter I received. My property resides on the corner lot between North Maple and 9th Avenue North. My garage is on the west side of my property. It has a garage door that opens to the south. I have a concrete driveway that runs from the start of my garage door all the way south to 9th Avenue North. For the 5 years I've lived in that property, I've always accessed my property through the driveway from 9th Avenue to the garage on my property. It would not benefit me in any means to have the alley paved running right next to my already concrete driveway that I use every day to get in and out of my property. I believe that perhaps the people who have garages that open up to the alley further up in the property area might be more benefited by this, because I don't feel that it would serve any benefit to me. Additionally, that having been said, I did recently, a couple months ago, pay about $1,000 for the removal of one of my trees in my east lot. It had Dutch elm disease and was marked by the city. So in addition to that $1,000 expense on the other tree, I don't feel at this time it would be fair to assess another possible $1,500–1,600 against me for the alley cost when I'm not going to get any benefit out of that. And I think if you're going to, I'd ask that you don't approve the alley to start with, but if you did, assess the cost against those who are actually using it and not against me, because I don't have any benefit from it. And the person who circulated the petition, Don Walraven, when he brought it down, acknowledged to me, you're on the end, Tracy, you don't really get much benefit out of this. That's my thought. Thank you.
Anyone else to speak to the 601B? If not, Dave?
The next project is 601C. This is a street. It's North Lake Drive from 338 North Lake Drive to the intersection of South Dakota Highway 139. This is over on the north side of Lake Kempeska. This is just a short stretch of this street. All of the rest of the street has been paved over previous years. We had another assessment probably 3 years or so ago that did the east end of this street, and this would be the last portion of that particular street. We received the petition back with 54.5% of the property represented. The other portion of this this represents actually all of the property owners other than the city. The city owns property across on the one side of this street. So we have 45.5% of the street costs.
Is there any, I'll open it up to a public hearing then on 601-C. Is there anyone to speak to that project? Yes, sir.
I'm Rich Thomas, and I live at 388 North Lake Drive, which is the very start of this project. It would be where the gravel and the blacktop meet on North Lake Drive there, or it's also called Cutts Avenue. And I'm the one that circulated the petition among my neighbors. And first of all, I'd like to express my gratitude, I guess, that there's a process to be able to pave the rest of this road. And secondly, the concern that we have is kind of, and maybe this is premature, in the design of the road, because two of the garages that abut on that road are well below the surface of the road. And with gravel there now, the water doesn't go down into their garages, and we're somewhat afraid that with blacktop, you know, unless the grade was done right, the water will be worse with it paved than it is with gravel. But we prefer to have it, I mean, personally, we prefer to have it paved. Our garage isn't in that situation. We curve down to the street, so we're higher at our garage, but our two adjacent neighbors are lower than the street. So I guess I would ask that in the design, something be done to hopefully alleviate a potential problem there for the owners along there.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak to 601-C? Yes, yes, sir.
I have the house number 394, and he talked about the garage being lower, and that is my concern, that the project be put in, that it wouldn't cause the water to come running into my garage. Otherwise, I'm in favor of it.
Dave, can you give them some assurance that it's going to be designed to carry the water the way it's supposed to?
We certainly look at all of those driveways as we do our design and do the best we can, you know, as far as the drainage. There's some areas that, you know, we can't satisfy all of those needs, but I believe on this one, when I looked at it, it appeared to me that we could cut the street down to take care of the drainage situation there. We haven't done any survey to verify that yet, but we will. We have the opportunity to drain it to the north into the city property, so that always helps also.
And what was the percentage of signatures on that one?
All of the 4 property owners
Awesome.
signed.
Well, is there anyone else then? If not, we'll close the public hearing on 601-C. Dave?
The next project is 601E. This is an alley from 1st Avenue South to 2nd Avenue South between 4th Street East and 5th Street East. This petition came in with signatures representing 57.1% of the property. This was 4 out of the 7 property owners along the alley that signed as in favor of this.
We'll open the public hearing then on 601-E. Is there anyone to speak to that project? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Dave?
Next project is 601F. This is a street project. It's 12th Street East from Kemp Avenue to 1st Avenue North. This is probably one of the few gravel streets that we still have left in this portion of the city. As a requirement of a building permit, one property owner was required to petition for having this street paved with curb and gutter. And he circulated the petition, and he had his signature and one other signature. The other signature was qualified that, or she put the statement on there that this was contingent upon the whole street being paved with curb and gutter. When the requirement was put in this building permit, it was put in there that the petition would be for either the whole street or the north half of the block. So if you would so choose to break it down farther than the whole street, you would have that option as far as just doing the north half of the block. The property owner the other property owner that signed was on the north half of the block. The petition represented 34.2% of the footage of the block, with the qualification from the one property owner. The other signature amounted to 22.6% of the block. And there are 5 total property owners on the block.
Dave, I have a question. Are 2 of the corners on this street rentals?
I'm not positive. I believe one of them is for sure that I'm aware of. I'm not sure about the other one.
And that has a factor in not signing the petition?
The two properties on the south side of the block are smaller homes on very small lots, and they have a lot of footage there because of being on the corner lot, and this block is, I believe they have about 200 foot of frontage along the south half of the block to the alley. So I assume that the value of the homes and the amount of the money that would cost to put the street in are probably the big factors in why they didn't sign off on this.
That's about the only gravel road in the whole east part of town, isn't it?
It's the only one I can think of.
But does it have to have curb and gutter, the whole thing too, on the
Yes, to make it drain, it has to have curb and gutter.
whole block, on both
Yes.
sides? Yep. Okay. So that'd be, say, $80 a foot for curb and gutter and $60 a foot for round figures?
Let's see, this one was, yeah,
If it's pavement and curb and gutter, it would be
Yeah.
about 80 bucks a foot. So
Oh.
if you got, for example.
Okay, both of them
one
would make 80.
Yeah.
we had estimated $75 to $80 per foot for those that don't have curb and gutter at the present time. There's one property that has curb and gutter, and we estimated that at $56 to $61 a foot.
We'll open up the public hearing then for 601-F. Is there anyone here to speak to that issue?
Name's Gary Geyer. I have one of the rentals on that street, southeast corner. And it's a lot 25 by 200. And the 200 runs on 12th Street. And according to my calculations, at $80 a foot, that's $16,000. I just bought the house a couple years ago. The county was just out there last year. They assessed it at $20,000. And so I'm kind of between a rock and a hard spot. You know, I have a mortgage on that and a short term, and that's coming due. If this goes through, that's $16,000 more assessed to the property. I wouldn't be able to refinance. If I sold it, I couldn't get enough money out of it. And if I rented it out with that $16,000, making $100 a month, it'd take the rest of my life, and I wouldn't gain nothing. So that's why I guess I'm against it, because you know, financially it put me in a real bind. And there's two other rentals on that street. I've spoken with Joe. I know he's across the street. He was against it. I did speak with Lois today. She's an elderly lady, and she wasn't able to make it here tonight. But she did give me a letter.
Dave, while the mayor's looking at that, what was the percentage of signers on this one?
There were two signatures representing 34.2%.
That are in favor?
Yes. And one of those signatures was contingent upon the whole block.
I'll read this letter from your neighbor.
Oh, okay.
It's from Lois Griegel, address 21 16th Street Southeast, Watertown. She says in regard to the curb gutter and blacktop on 12th Street between Kemp and First Avenue Northeast, I am on Social Security and the cost is quite high, so not in favor at this time. About 3 years ago, we got a letter from the city. They said it was going to cost us $50 a foot, which would be $4,000. Now they said $6,500 to $7,600. Has things really gone up that much? And that was her letter, so she's not in favor of it, so.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Point of order, do we, if we're pulling some out, do we do that now during the process or at the end? Okay, that one, you know, even though it would be nice to see that street blacktopped, I think the percentages are low. I'll make a motion that we pull that one off the roll.
Okay, there's been a motion to pull 601-F off the roll. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mrs. Walder. Any further discussion?
Yes,
I think we do have one more gentleman. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. You come ahead.
Well,
Go ahead and speak before we vote.
I'm to the south here. The property lines run McElhaney, who did the building up on the north side. He's 200 feet of frontage. We're 230 feet. This is, by the way, the most expensive operation in the whole sheet. The estimate, and I have to outline estimate because we've seen things go the other way, runs between 17,250 to 18,400 for us on our 230 feet. Mr. McElhaney already has curbs and gutters, and his cost is much less, running between 11.2 and 12.2. And I came up with 77% of the square footage, at least, against this. I have to say that this is, one, an expensive item. Two, it's ill-timed in that energy costs are up, pensions are being looted, and we happen to be faced with a cancer in the family. I'm just back from Mayo Clinic. We'll never recoup the additional cost of the street, and we are at fixed income like a lot of other people. But thank you very much for your consideration.
Excuse me, sir, could I have you state your name for the record, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Joe Ament, A-M-E-N-D-T.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We had a motion and a second to remove item 601F from the rolls. Is there any discussion from the council members?
I think in this particular instance, it's the correct thing to do, but I also think as a council, we should have a plan to take a look at what remaining unpaved streets there are in this city. We'll never pave this street if we go this route, and we need to figure out how to get it done, because we can't just leave a gravel street there, but at the same time, it's not, I don't believe it's fair to put this type of a burden on these individuals. And I think it's something that if it's a priority to the city, in cases, we might want to just take a look at what we have left in the city and come up with a plan just to get them done.
Also, I have a question not only about this one, but also what about the majority rules here on these street assessment projects? I was under the impression it was a majority rule. And,
No. It's not. What are the numbers again, Dave? How does that work? You tell us every year, and every year we have to be refreshed.
It's my understanding by the way it's written in the state law is that the council can declare a resolution of necessity anytime that they want on these streets. If they do, the property owners have 20 days after the resolution of necessity is published to petition, and they have to have 55% of the footage represented to defeat the resolution.
Thank you, Dave. You, Gordy, is there?
But now A was what, 34% in favor of? Is that the way I understood it?
A was 35.7% in favor.
Dave, I think on this particular 601F, we should go back to the drawing board. It just seems like something's way out of whack. I go along with Gary and some of these people. I know they have a lot of footage. On the other hand, that's a lot of money. Does it have to have curb and gutter, or can it be just paved?
It's flat enough where if you don't have curb and gutter, you have to take care of the drainage some way. And ditches aren't appropriate in this area. I mean, if the water runs along the edge of the street, then we potentially damage the edge of the asphalt. So that is a constant problem. So I don't see how we do it without either putting ditches in or curb and gutter. One thing I'd like to point out on this is that the north half of this block is 165 to the alley. The south half is 200 to the alley. The north half, Mr. McElhaney has one side which is 165 feet. On the other side, there's one property owner that has 80 foot and one has 85 foot. I believe it's the one with 80 feet has curb and gutter in front of their property at the present time. Just so you know where we're at if you should decide to only do a portion of this, the north half of the project. That is an option.
We have a motion and a second to remove 601-F from the roll. Yes.
A point of order here, we're still in public hearing area. Don't we have to wait until we get council action on all of these?
Each hearing is being held separately for each of these 8 projects, so that it's appropriate at the end of each, at the hearing at the end of each project to either remove that project from the resolution or to amend it in some way. I think that's being offered as a possible alternative in this case. Or if you choose to leave it in the resolution, no action is necessary.
So Stan, where are we at then? We were in a public hearing and I think we closed it, didn't we? And then we had a...
Yeah, I confess that when Mrs. York invited Mr. Ahmed to speak, I don't know if after that point you in fact declared the public hearing on this project closed.
I believe you're right, so we'll close the public hearing and now we'll ask for a motion. Nancy, did you want to make a motion again?
I will remake my motion to pull this project from the plan.
There's been a motion to remove this project from the plan by Mrs. York. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mrs. Walder. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I have a question for Dave. Do you know approximately how many streets we do not have paved in Watertown, to give us an idea?
No, I really don't know exactly how many gravel streets we still have. Like I said before, as far as in the main residential areas, this is the only one that I can think of that isn't paved.
Isn't there one just off 14th Avenue North, across from the soccer field? There's one block there that's also not
That's been
paved.
repaired. No,
Yeah, I believe there is one there that goes from 10th to 9th.
I kind of go along with Brad's idea. Let's figure something else out.
I think in the budgeting process, we should just come up with a game plan to take care of this over a couple of years.
Well, you know, I sympathize with these landowners down there, but it just doesn't make any sense to me to have gravel, non-curb and gutter streets in the city of Watertown. It's going to enhance their property by as much as or more than what you're paying for that street. It just has to.
I think in most cases, George is right. I mean, in most cases, I believe that to be the case. With these particular properties and the width of their lots and the houses, I think they're correct. They're not gonna recover the cost of that, but it's a general rule. You're correct, but I think in this specific case, and that's why this street's never been paved, because if we run into this issue and so.
No, I think it's never been paved because the council's always backed off whenever you've had people complain about it.
Any further discussion? All in favor of removing 601-F from the roll, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Do you wish to have a roll call, Tracy?
That's up to you, Mayor.
Okay, just let the record show that Alderman Heller was the only one that opposed.
Thank you.
All the rest was aye. Dave, on to the next one.
The next project is 601I. This is an alley from 2nd Street East to 3rd Street East between 7th Avenue South and 8th Avenue South. This one we received back with only one signature out of the 6 property owners, and that signature represented 25% of the property along the alley.
Thank you, Dave. We'll have a public hearing on 601-I. Is there anyone to speak to this issue? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Does the council wish to do any adjustments with this one? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Then Dave will go on to the next one.
The next project is 601J. It's an alley from 12th Street East to 13th Street East between 2nd Avenue South and 3rd Avenue South. This came back with 10 signatures out of the 16 along this alley, and those 10 signatures represented 60% of the frontage.
Thank you, Dave. I'll open a public hearing up for 601-J. Is there anyone to speak to the issue? Please step forward.
Hi, I'm Tracy Palmer. I live at 225 13th Street Southeast, Watertown. And my property it borders the alley, but I don't have any access to the alley. I have a privacy fence that runs along there, and then I have a paved driveway that runs next to that, so it would benefit me in no way, so I just wanted you to take that into consideration.
There's a lot of traffic that goes through there already, and with it being paved, it's just gonna get 10 times worse. And there's a lot of kids that ride their bikes out there, and it's just dangerous to me. We would not benefit from it whatsoever. Maggie Palmer, by the way.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Maggie. Is there anyone else to speak to the issue?
My name is Walter Partridge. I live at 1215 3rd Avenue. And I started the petition. And we feel that it's needed to control the dust in the area and make the road a little bit easier. The drainage on the street causes a big swamp during the winter. So we're thinking that paving the alley will make the alley passable in the winter a little bit easier.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak to the issue? If not, we'll close the public hearing. I'll ask if the council has any desire to make any additions or changes. If not, we'll move on to I believe the last one, Dave.
This is project 601K. This is for an alley from 2nd Avenue South to 3rd Avenue South between 5th Street East and 6th Street East. This came in with 8 out of the 8 property owners signing for a total of 100%.
Is there anyone to speak to the issue? Open for a public hearing. If not, we'll close the public hearing, and I guess the next step is the council action on resolution number 5-57 as the whole package, minus 601-F, I believe.
Before we vote, Brad made a good suggestion about us looking at all the streets that are left in Watertown that are not blacktop or paved. And would it be possible to have the staff, Mike or Dave, explore those streets? I'd like to know which ones they are. And perhaps we will need to do something budget-wise to allow, at least for the streets and avenues.
I believe that's very possible with the GIS information we have from First District. They have a lot of that information on there that we can probably query it and get a list of those that are still gravel.
Might I suggest that we do that and we bring that back through the Public Works Committee and develop a recommendation for the council in that manner?
Would you put a time limit on that, please?
How about second meeting in December?
That's okay with me.
We usually cancel that meeting.
Jeez.
I just want to make one comment too before we vote, and it would be nice if they were all as simple as the last one with 100% of the signatures. That's the way we ideally would like to have them. And it's always hard, it always comes down to the majority rules thing, and I certainly sympathize with the ones that are on the end of an alley or for some reason don't use that alley whatsoever. But in keeping with the neighborhood, that's part of living in a neighborhood, I guess, and whoever designed this ordinance many, many years ago, that must be what they had in mind. But this is always a particularly difficult meeting for me, listening to these, because I know that, there's a lot of us that have lived on streets that were undeveloped when we moved into them that got smacked with this assessment, and it is not a fun thing. And so I do sympathize. But now after tonight, after we take the vote, then there's still a chance for another petition, correct, Dave? I'm asking you to do this again. He's thinking, stop.
That's correct. Anytime a property owner wants to take out a petition for a street or an alley, we will present it to the council again.
But after we vote on this tonight, the people that were opposed, if they find enough opposition in their neighborhood to become now the majority, then that project can be canceled yet, correct? Until when?
Those that you approve tonight, they have 20 days from
20
when
days,
it's
okay.
published in the paper to present a petition against it.
With 55%.
With 55%.
With that being said, on to agenda item 4B, we need council
Okay.
action. We just did. No, we didn't. We haven't voted yet.
Right.
So we need a motion for resolution 5-57 minus 601-F, I believe.
Right.
Need a motion to approve. Nancy?
We got the motion.
We got the motion?
We just need to vote.
Oh, we just need to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I apologize for getting lost in this maze.
Excuse me, Mayor, I don't believe we did have a motion on the final.
I didn't think we did either.
I thought you made the motion.
No, let's go back, turn the clock back. Okay, Nancy made a motion to the approval of the resolution 5-57 minus the one that we had pulled out. In a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Meisenheimer. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. That was a mean one, number 4 was. I certainly apologize to everyone too about that. Next, we move on to agenda item number 5, which is plat of Endry's Third Industrial Edition, which is resolution 5-55. And Rick?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. I have available to you, if there are questions as to location, what this is kind of looking like. I have available to us our geographic information system with aerial photographs if we need that. But first of all, number 5, plat of Endry's 3rd Industrial Edition. In a nutshell, it is a replat of city-owned properties in Endry's Industrial Park. If you take where the new TSC store is, that's 23rd Street. South there all the way over to about where the new Walmart is located. That is the area in general that is being replatted in accordance with the master plan revisions that were approved by the Plan Commission in April 2005. The recommendation from the Plan Commission in their October 20th meeting is for the approval of this plat, and I would request your motion to do the same.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Johnson, seconded by
Second.
by Mr. Giselbeck. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Rick. Next item number 6, Rick.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a first reading of ordinance 05-14 to rezone lots 20 through 26 of Putter's Green. The request comes to you from Dale Christensen representing ET Partnership Incorporated. This ordinance 05-14 has been written in draft form for discussion or presentation anyway this evening in response to their petition dated September 27th. The petition calls for a request to rezone all their property right now in Putter's Green subdivision is R1 single family residential. There is that portion, lots 20 through 26, that is being proposed to rezone from that R1 single family residential to R2 single-family attached residential. Typically what we're talking about there is duplex, and that's the understanding that I have is what the proposal is. The lots that are located in those in that area, lots 20 through 26, are of sufficient size to accommodate duplexes without replat. Again, tonight the purpose of this evening's discussion is to merely hold this first reading and to announce to the public the intent of the rezoning. The Plan Commission will hold a public hearing on this Wednesday, November 9th at 12:15 right here in this room. The City Council will also have a public hearing on this matter November 21st at 7 p.m. and that's when we'll have the second reading, the public hearing, and council action to rezone. No action is necessary this evening.
Thank you, Rick. Agenda item number 7 is the transportation study update from URS and Herb.
Thank you, Mayor, and what we're going to talk about is just that. For over a year, quite a few people have been working on this transportation study, and which has involved numerous individuals and agencies from around the city, within the county, and civic interest groups. And that tonight we'll provide you a brief update, and then hopefully at the end seek your endorsement of the final study. In August of 2004, the City of Watertown and the South Dakota Department of Transportation contracted with the URS Corporation from Omaha, Nebraska, to conduct this study. URS, the DOT, and representatives of the city and various other entities, like I said, have done a lot of work. That included data collection, development of goals, establishing priorities, developing alternatives, and ultimately selecting some recommendations with the purpose of guiding Watertown's area transportation development over the next 25 to 30 years. Groups participating in this study were a steering committee consisting of members of city staff, Plan Commission, the DOT, Focus Watertown, the school. Also, we had a stakeholder group which represented quite a few of the business people within the community, as well as some local interest groups and also the public. You've been provided a copy of the report as well as an executive summary, which hopefully was a little bit easier reading for you prior to the meeting tonight. At this point in time, I want to introduce two people. Standing at the podium is Mr. Bill Troe, who is Senior Transportation Planner from the URS Corporation, and also in the audience is Mr. Rick Laughlin, who is a Corridor Preservation Specialist with the South Dakota Department of Transportation. Bill and Rick facilitated the process that we went through and kept all the various groups I mentioned before on task. Without them, this would have probably taken even longer. But so with that, what we want to do is give you a brief wrap-up of the study with a presentation that Bill's going to hit some key highlights as well as a snapshot of the recommendations. Rick and I are available to answer any questions you might have.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Bill Troe, and I'm a Senior Transportation Planner with the URS Corporation. Each of you has a packet in front of you that is my presentation, and Herb did a better job of it than I'll probably do because I think he hit almost every slide. So, you know, you won't get a bill for tonight. Okay, what I just wanted to do is just talk really briefly about the process that we had followed. Again, everybody does have a copy of the report. You do have a copy of the executive summary. And if you continue to have any questions after tonight, you know, the last slide here gives you connections to us, connections to the website, and Herb and Rick are always there to answer questions. But if you go to the third slide in the handout here, since you wrote most of the check, I have some extras here if folks want them. It's just riveting. But the third slide there that walks through our study process is our process was essentially broken down into 3 phases. We had our initial phase of data collection where we went out and obtained information on where the crashes in town occurred, collected information from the DOT and what the city might have had already on traffic counts throughout the community. We conducted what we call an external station study where we had set up a bunch of survey locations at the major roads going in and out of the city of Watertown, handed out surveys to all those folks that came by in the morning and the new time in the afternoon, gathered a bunch of information back from that, basically telling us if you're coming into Watertown, are you on these routes, are you going through Watertown, are you stopping in Watertown? And it basically gave us a little bit of an understanding of those folks traveling in and out of town, what their destinations were on a very gross scale. I mean, it wasn't that I was coming into town and I went to well, I guess we did ask some destination information also, but you know, we did not track the vehicle all the way through town, but we did get some gross information on their destinations. This was also the period of the study where we went through and developed the goals and objectives that I'll hit on in a couple of minutes. But this was basically setting the stage. Where has Watertown been? Where are we today? And then we moved into our second phase of the study that was basically, okay, now we know where we're at today. We need to be looking out 25 or 30 years. Our horizon year was the year 2030. So we had to initially come up with a land use plan. And in reality, since First District had walked through with the community and the county a comprehensive plan, we had some really good recent information that made the job on the transportation studies so much easier. And I think in a community the size of Watertown, that idea of going in and staggering a little bit when you do an update of the comprehensive plan relative to when you do an update of the transportation plan, in each of those documents, as long as you're thinking about the idea of staggering them, I think is a good idea so that you can focus on one, take the information that you gather from that, and then use it in the other one. And there we had also developed traffic forecasts going out to the year 2030. In a lot of those areas where we're seeing growth, we're seeing some very substantial increases in traffic, particularly in the the northeast part of town and the southeast part of town. Those areas where we're anticipating to see development. We developed some maps of where we're anticipating congestion relative to today. You look at the system today and there isn't a great amount of congestion. There's a little bit along 212, a little bit along 81 as you're approaching 212, but for the most part things in town flow pretty well. But again, with all of the development that's being anticipated or forecast through the year 2030, if we don't do anything in town, where congestion occurs starts to really spread out from where you're seeing it today. If there are locations in town that you got a little bit of trouble getting around, if we don't do anything by the year 2030, you know, there's going to be a lot more of those and they're going to grow from where they are today. Our third phase was working through the alternatives to address where we have safety concerns, where we have capacity concerns, where we have connectivity concerns. And I think we want to emphasize, and have emphasized throughout the transportation plan, that this is a multimodal transportation plan. It's not just roads, it's not just the sidewalks and trails, it's not just the transit system. It's taking into account all of those different modes and blending them into a single document that has information on basically the blueprint of where we want to go. I mean, there's not a lot of detail in there as to the information on, you know, how long is this turn lane, how long is this cycle length, but it is basically a blueprint of where we need to be going with the improvements. Through that whole third phase, we went through a process of the URS Corporation and the steering committee going through and identifying what kinds of improvements could we look at, and those might be addressing a bottleneck at a particular intersection through signalization, or adding a turn lane, or widening a lane a little bit to give you a little bit more comfort. Went through a two-step process of narrowing and providing additional detail as we went through that of the alternatives that are out there. We tossed some aside, kept some in, and then went through the next process of coming up with cost estimates for each of those. And that's really when it starts to get fun, because you start to see this big pot of what you could anticipate for expenditures over the course of the next 20 or 30 years. And that's when you start to also then look at, well, this is what we got for transportation service out of that particular improvement. This is what it's going to cost. You know, are those two things in balance? When we also look at, well, what were the adjacent impacts? If we're looking at widening a road, are we affecting homes? Are we affecting parks? Are we affecting businesses? Are we getting into a situation where we're making the decision between maintaining a sidewalk or not, or taking more right-of-way or not, and it gets into a real balancing act. And then finally we went through the process of developing our implementation, or what is our basic program for bringing each of these projects online and through the whole project development process, which the transportation plan on a lot of these is the beginning, and then you might have to go into an environmental analysis and more of a detailed engineering and work your way through the process. Through the whole process, there was an extensive amount of public involvement that I'll talk about at the very end. The next slide just basically shows our study area, which is the city of Watertown, and going out 2 or 3 miles. So again, we're not looking at just the city, we're looking at where the city is going to be growing, because that's where we're going to see the greatest percentage increment in traffic growth, and in a lot of situations the greatest absolute growth in traffic is going to be in the developing areas. The next slide is our transportation plan goals. We developed 5 of them through the process of working with the steering committee, reviewed those with our stakeholders committee and adjusted those, took them to a public meeting and made some adjustments after the gathering input from the public. But our 5 goals are really based on providing a safe transportation system, addressing mobility throughout the community, and also associated with that is the connectivity, and it's also the connectivity of the various systems, the roadway system with the sidewalk and the trail system, the transit system, all of those various subsystems of the overall transportation umbrella, working those into a cohesive unit. And finally, making sure that as we're looking at transportation, we also have our eye on that transportation system supporting economic development within the region. The next slide shows you an example of the range of the roadway improvements that we were looking at through the course of the study. That we were looking at elements that may be, again, improving a bottleneck, and that's basically an improvement that we called the transportation systems management, or basically managing what you have out there a little bit more, as opposed to adding a lot of through capacity or additional through lanes. That would be a turn lane, a signal, maybe it's extending the sidewalk another few blocks to provide connectivity. But this is the universe of concepts that we had then run through our 2-step process of trying to initially look at them on a very cursory level, identifying those things that had a fatal flaw to them, that it had too great of an impact when we needed more right of way, or geez, it looks like a good idea, but it just doesn't resolve or doesn't address the issue that we're trying to address to the same extent that we thought that it might have when we initially looked at it. Also what we've incorporated into the transportation plan are those elements that we call the committed improvements, and those would be things that are in the state transportation improvement program, the things that are in the capital improvement program for the city and the county. That's the First Avenue extension, that's improvements to the 81 corridor at the intersection 212. It's the northern connector, some of those bigger items that are already essentially in the hopper or in the pipeline. Those things are also incorporated into our transportation plan. The next slide is the recommended roadway improvements, and there's a color-coded map here that provides information on where they are in the transportation plan document, and in the executive summary there's an associated table with these. But this is also shows our project implementation, that we've divided into short-range projects, mid-range projects that would be 5 to 15 years out, and then long-range projects that would take us out into the last 10 years of our horizon out to 2030. But then we've also incorporated selected projects in here of those things that we evaluated through the transportation planning process, but they're either weren't warranted in our mind right now or within the planning horizon through 2030. But there are things out there that let's not forget these, and that if development continues to go at the pace that we've seen, or if development takes off, or if development goes to another part of town, we've already got some ideas out there and done some analysis of some ideas, such as a southern bypass that's several miles outside the city as opposed to one that's relatively close to the limits of the city and the limits of development. But things just to keep your eye on as we continue down the road and watch Watertown to continue to grow. And the next slide is our recommended trails improvements, and again there's a table within the overall document that describes each of these elements. Again, this is broken into short-term, mid-term, long-term, and this is consistent with the comprehensive trails plan, and we've built off of that and added elements to that, providing connectivity to mainly recreational type facilities or institutional facilities, the schools, some shopping, the parks, and we're trying to provide connectivity between those elements, not necessarily focusing first and foremost on bicycle and pedestrian transportation as a commuter type service. The next slide just gives you a brief information on the sidewalk and transit system improvements that we've included. Again, we're incorporating the elements of the comprehensive sidewalk plan. Transit, we addressed that a little bit through coordination with the existing transit providers, Watertown Area Transit, and incorporated into it the need to continue to expand the bus fleet, replace the bus fleet, and I guess we had talked a little bit about maybe modifying the existing dial-a-ride or demand responsive service to incorporate a fixed route element to that that maybe circulates between the medical facilities, the shopping areas, some of the elderly assisted living facilities, those things that are more associated with the transit-dependent folks in town, and trying to get them a little bit more service. But that kind of touches on the various elements that we have. We've also incorporated elements from the airport master plan into this, so it is truly multimodal. And then the next slide is, okay, now we got this nice little document here, and it was pretty easy to read. But, okay, you got the document, now what are we going to do with it? Yeah, so that we've also incorporated into it a chapter on, we ain't done yet. We're only really beginning. And that we put in there kind of a basic roadmap of how do you take elements that are included in the transportation plan and work them through the system. And that it is, in my opinion, going to take continued effort by the steering committee and the stakeholder committee and the citizenry of Watertown to make sure that you continually review the elements of the transportation plan and start to pull those forward, not necessarily exactly on the basis as we show in here, but the elements are continually reviewed, and those that need to come forward, and we may be shuffling things around a little bit, but there is a roadmap included in here as to how you take it out of here and get it into actually a project on the street. The next slide, I think, is probably almost one of the most important slides in this whole presentation. It's I think we had provided a number of good opportunities and will continue to provide opportunities for the public to gather input. But we held 3 public meetings, or one early in the process to work with the public on issues and goals. The second public meeting was that, well, here's where we're anticipating that we're going in the future from a land use standpoint, and here's the resulting traffic that we forecast off of that. And then our final was our preliminary recommendations. Following that group of public meetings, we made some minor adjustments and moved on to development of the document. We have a study website that is still active, and it would be my understanding or my desire to keep that up for a while, that it doesn't do any of us any good that, oh, okay, now we send in our final invoice and let's shut that bad boy off. That we'll just leave that open, and through that folks can still provide comments or ask questions about the transportation planning process, and that'll go to both Rick and to Herb and also to us, and you know, I don't have any problem answering questions as we continue to work on down the road. We had our stakeholders meetings that followed our steering committee and preceded our public meetings, and we made several presentations to some of the civic groups in town as we were kind of working our way through the process. And that's pretty much it. The last slide there is just basically some information as to how you can get access to the website. The document is out on the website, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that URS will continue to answer questions that people send in. I've still got websites open on transportation plans that we did probably 2 years ago, and you know, just every now and then a question comes in. So I think that's a very worthwhile endeavor. You went to all that trouble to pay for the domain name, might as well keep it. Any questions?
I would certainly commend Bill Troe and his corporation for the outstanding work they've done in the development of this product. Really, they led the process from start to finish and really helped facilitate what I think is a very good plan that's going to serve this city well for a long time. And with that, I'd ask for a motion to adopt the plan as presented.
Your Honor, I'd make that motion.
It's a motion by Alderman Garnis to accept the plan. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Solberg. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, and a very good job. Captain Haig will discuss item number 8, which is the record agreement amendment to increase towing fees.
Thank you and good evening. I'll give you just a short historical background. This is the reason why we're here with this issue. On August 29th, the 4 wrecker services in Watertown that we contract with for towing services submitted a letter to me requesting an amendment to the contract that we do have, specifically relating to section 19, paragraph A and D, requesting an increase in the fees charged by them for towing services, citing an increase in fuel costs. This request was referred by us to the Watertown City Council Safety Committee for consideration, and the request was brought before the Safety Committee at their September 20th meeting. The request at this meeting was referred for further study and further consideration of the fee increases, and the reason for that was that some of the fee increases that the wrecker services were asking of us weren't really relative to the rising cost of fuel. So members of the Safety Committee asked that I chair a subcommittee to study the issues, meet with them, and talk to them a little bit and try to come to a more suitable compromise. The subcommittee was formed to discuss the request with the wrecker services, and that committee consisted of Mayor Fox, Chief VTEC, Stanton Fox, Councilman Garnos, Brian Crocker representing Crocker's Wrecker, Mike Price representing HIR Wrecker, and myself. The subcommittee met on October 13th at the police department, and after considerable discussion, agreed to take back to the safety committee the recommendation to grant an increase of the wrecker services fee, currently set at $50 to $75 for basic towing. A second request was to increase the fees for city vehicles from $35 currently to $50. That was also approved. And that issue then was brought back to the safety committee from the subcommittee, where we talked about it at the safety committee meeting on October 18th, and at that time it was unanimously agreed upon to bring it to the full city council for consideration. So I guess in a nutshell, what we're asking for is permission to amend the current contract with our wrecker services to allow for an increase of $25 for towing services and for an increase of $15 for towing city vehicles. All other increases that they requested were tabled indefinitely until the next contract negotiation, which really doesn't occur until, I think, 2007. And those fees, like I said, weren't really related to the cost of fuel as much as the fees that we discussed at the last safety committee meeting are. You know, I guess we felt at that time that it really wasn't proper to enter into an attempt to break the contract for those fees when there really wasn't an urgent or present urgency to break that contract. So the whole gist of the request is to cite the rising cost of fuel.
Have a motion, please, to accept that amendment.
So move.
So moved by Mr. Garno, seconded by Mr. Solberg. Any further discussion? If
Just
not-
in time for snowstorm.
Yes.
Yeah. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Dave. Shauna. Item number 9 is the renewal of agreement with Wellmark for Section 125 Plan Administration.
Good evening. In your packets, you should have a copy of kind of an overview of what the Wellmark Section 125 plan. For those of you who may not be familiar with it, it is a method or a way for employees to get the best bang for their buck for their dollars that go towards health issues or for daycare. Basically what it does is it takes there's three parts of it. The employee's contribution towards their health insurance comes out of their money pre-tax, so they have tax savings there. They can elect to have money withheld to use towards health issues, for instance, dental care, things that aren't covered normally under their insurance policy or their deductibles, things like that, or they can have money set aside pre-tax also to be used to spend on their daycare expenses. The renewal this year came in pretty much the same as what it has been in the past. The city pays for all of the expenses involved with the program, so really for an employee to participate, it costs them nothing, but they get a lot of savings out of the process. Last year, we had about 72 people participate, which is about 40% of our employees, full-time employees. We'd like to see that increase just for the fact that it is beneficial to the employees. Like I said, the city pays for all the expenses. The one thing I will point out to you is that the annual administrative charge this year did go up by $78, which isn't significant, or isn't very significant, I guess I should say. The total administrative charges are $1,164. We also pay a $5 per month per participant fee. We do elect to pay that once annually so we can receive a 5% discount. The savings also roll over to the city because those dollars that the employees choose to use towards medical or dependent care expense are pre-tax for them. They're also pre-tax for us in regards to FICA and Medicare tax. So we do recognize the savings on our behalf too. If you look in your packet, there was a significant misstatement I did on the calculations of the savings. When I did the calculations for you folks, I only based it on the amounts that the employees withhold for their medical independent care accounts, and I neglected to include the amounts that they contribute towards their health insurance premiums. So the total contribution amount that our savings is based on is actually $345,590. So the city's FICA portion of that is $26,437, as opposed to, I think they're just $7,000 is what I had on your packets. So our total potential savings comes to $21,169. This has gone through the Finance Committee, and it comes to this group with a recommendation to approve the renewal.
Thank you, Sean. May I have a motion then to approve this?
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Walter, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wilson. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carried. Shauna?
Okay, we also have the renewal for our health insurance with Wellmark this year. Overall, we have a 9.71% increase. According to our provider, this is below the trend of 12.75. This past year, we did have 21 claims over $10,000, and I guess typically they would expect a group our size to have about 15 to 16 claims at that level. Now, 4 of our 21 claims were also over 35,000, and 2 of them are over 100,000. So that might kind of explain some of the increase that it was above what we had last year. In the plan is virtually the same as it has been the last few years. We offer the employees 2 choices, 2 PPO plans or preferred provider plans. In the packet, or in the agenda handouts that you got, there is a breakdown of the health insurance renewals. Just kind of for a reminder on how that works with the city does pay the first $550 of the premium cost for family, and then the remainder is split between the city and employee. The city pays the extra 40, and the employee picks up the other 60%. And then for single coverage, the city will pay the entire premium for PPO2, and if the employee would like to buy up and do the PPO1 plan, they just pay the difference in premiums. The PPO1 plan, just to give you a brief review, that's considered the richer plan of the two. It has a $500 deductible and $85.15 co-insurance. The premium for this plan, as you can see, has gone up a total of $83.35. So with the renewal, it would, the total renewal or the total premium to the employee is going to go up $50. So the employee will be paying $205.92, and the city would be paying $687.27. For single, again, as I mentioned, for PPO1, the employee can buy up to this plan, and they would pay the difference between the PPO2 rate and the PPO1 rate, which is $34.23, and the city would pay the $323.05. PPO2, which is a plan that has a $1,000 deductible and 80/20 co-insurance, and it also has a $20 copay, which a lot of employees really seem to like. We do have more people participating in this plan than we do in the PPO1. The increase is here to the employee for family under PPO2. It's a $42.11 per month increase, which brings the premium for the employee up to $154.58. The city would be paying $653.05 for a total premium of $807.63. And again, the city would pay the entire premium for the single if they chose the PPO2 plan, which is $323.05. Just to kind of give you some perspective on this, this is a total increase in the city's contribution of the premium based on this year's enrollment of about $62,000. Overall, the city's cost for health insurance for employees comes to just under $1.2 million a year. So it is a rather significant expense that we budget for each year. Unless you guys have any other questions, this does come to you also with a recommendation from the Finance Committee to approve the renewal as presented.
May I have a motion, please? Motion by Mr. Meisenheimer, seconded by Mr. Wilson. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Shauna. Next, we have item number 12 was the consideration, item number 11. Construction change order number 1 to contract with McLaughlin and Schultz Incorporated for the 14th Avenue North project for $40. Shane?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. This is the first change order, and this reflects as-built quantities for the 14th Avenue North project, and for a total increase of $40. And I look for your motion for approval.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Johnson, seconded by? Seconded by Mr. Giselbeck for $40. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next, we have item number 12, which is consideration of changing the official name of the airport to Watertown Regional Airport. Eric?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight, basically, I'm asking your authorization to change the official name of the Watertown Municipal Airport to Watertown Regional Airport. There's a couple of different reasons why we'd want to do this. The primary reason is the regional more accurately describes what the airport actually is, or the services that it actually provides. Regional presents a larger airport with more air carrier service, more general aviation services, and such, which accurately reflects what we do at Watertown. We have good air service outside of the region, we have a great FBO at the airport, and all those services more reflect a regional airport than a municipal airport. One of the other reasons we would like to do this is to avoid the side effect of being called a municipal airport in the eyes of maybe the general public. A municipal airport kind of looks as itself as a small airport that only has limited general aviation abilities and not as much services that would be available as a regional airport. So those are the two major facts that have to do with why we'd want to change our name to regional instead of municipal. Like I said, the change to regional airport more accurately reflects the services that we offer at the airport, and it shows our community that Watertown Regional Airport is here for every one of their aviation needs, whatever those needs would be: air traffic, general aviation, fixed base operation, mechanics, or so forth. We have a full service FBO, and that reflects everything we need to do. So I would recommend, as the Public Works Committee did, that we authorize the change of the name to Watertown Regional Airport and have the City Council and Mayor draft up a letter to the FAA to that effect. And if you have any questions, I would be free to answer them.
Anybody have any questions? Just for sake of discussion, we have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mrs. Arbogast, seconded.
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Now, discussion.
Who designed the logo?
Who?
Yeah.
That was me. You guys approved the logos back in, I don't know, what was that, last year sometime? And I just changed basically municipal to regional and did all the little tweaks, but that's basically the same logo that we've had for a while now.
Any other discussion? Any questions? How much expense is this going to cost for stationery and items like that, signage?
It would come out of normal line budget items.
It would.
The biggest expense that we'd have would be changing the airport drive sign out there on Highway 20. But we already have that budget in for next year to build a whole new sign anyway, so this would be the proper time to do that.
Okay. Further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much.
Item number 13 is consideration of compensation for right-of-way from South Dakota Department of Transportation for the North Connector route. And Herb?
Thank you, Mayor. The last two pages in your council packet reflect a couple documents that I'd like to review with you. I was contacted by Mr. Dave Hempel from the Department of Transportation, who is the right-of-way acquisition specialist working on acquiring the right-of-way along the northern connector route. He just happened to start on the west end, which in fact impacts us because where the connector ties into Highway 20, it crosses the bike trail. So there's a couple of small portions of the bike trail that are actually impacted by where the road, where they realign Suconifer Road and where the connector road actually ties into Highway 20. It's necessary for the DOT to purchase approximately 3/10 of an acre of property, and also to have a temporary easement on another 4/10 of an acre to be able to tie into Highway 20. The bike trail will be temporarily rerouted to the shoulder of Highway 20 while this section of road is under construction. The attachment in the package entitled Offer and Statement of Compensation details the proposed terms of the purchase. You can see the various quotes there that total $1,740. Ultimately, this amount will simply be deducted from our expenses when we go back and actually pay for the right-of-way and purchase it back from the state. But to proceed, the DOT actually needs this action signed by the city council, or signed by the mayor, approved by the city council. This request comes with the Public Works recommendation for approval from the last meeting. Therefore, I'd request a motion to approve the transfer right away from the city of Watertown to the state of South Dakota.
May I have a motion for that, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Johnson, seconded?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mrs. Arbogast. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Herb. Next, we'll have the item number 14, which is the authorization to advertise for bids for the purchase of 4 new patrol cars. Captain Haig.
Thanks again. We're here tonight to request permission to advertise for bids for 4 new patrol cars for the year 2006. We do have money in the budget to accommodate that. I've checked the state bid prices and don't anticipate any problems with exceeding what we have budgeted by any means. And I should also state up front that in this year's specifications, we have more narrowly defined the specifications of the kind of car we're looking for. So it might eliminate a couple of the possible bidders out there from bidding on patrol cars.
We have a motion then for the authorization for the purchase of 4 new patrol cars for bids.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Giselbeck and seconded.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Stolberg. Any discussion? Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like Dave to explain that last statement that you made. Why are you trying to eliminate?
It's our hopes to go back to a rear-wheel drive car with a little larger trunk capacity, a little larger interior capacity. And we've been plagued with maintenance problems for the last 2 years at least. I think this year and last year both we had to come back and request budget supplements to our maintenance lines because we've been overexpending that line because of the ongoing maintenance problems we're having with a specific model of car that we currently have. And it's our hopes to bid this year and as I said, go back to the rear-wheel drive car, which would possibly eliminate the front-wheel drive car that we're having so much problem with right now.
Thank you very much.
I noticed today in the Aberdeen paper, the police department was in the same situation you are, but they're looking at leasing. Have we ever discussed, or have you ever done any surveys or investigation on leasing versus purchasing?
I haven't. Boy, I think it's been the city's policy, correct me if I'm wrong, Tracy, that we really don't lease equipment like that.
I was just curious, as to why they went that particular route and wondered if we'd ever checked into it.
Never have.
Thank you.
I don't know if I'd want to buy one that's got 100,000
miles on it.
We don't care, that's true. So, well, all in favor say aye to allow for the bid. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 15 is a motion to acknowledge notice to conduct a raffle by LATI Physical Therapist Assistant Chapter. And so if I could have a motion then to acknowledge that raffle. So moved by Mr. Solberg and seconded.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Meisenheimer. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 16, and we'll do this as one, consideration of business license applications for Gene Day Excavating as a pipe layer for $50 and Grant County Excavation for a liquid waste hauler for $50. Could I have a motion for those, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Garnos, seconded by Mr. Giselbeck. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 17 is a motion to approve bills and payroll as presented and authorize payment. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Arbogast, seconded?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Johnson. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 18 is the open. Is there anyone have anything for the open? If not, we'll move to item number 19, which, excuse me, go ahead, Mr. Garnos. That's correct. There's no items on the open. We're going to have enough tape in that machine, Josh. We'll move on to old business. Is there any old business? Any new business? Any liaison member reports? We will need to go in executive session for possible litigation matters. I need a motion to go into executive session. So moved by Mrs. Walder, second. Seconded by Mr. Solberg. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We need to go into executive session. When we come out, there will be no action required.